Yeah, a thought came to mind as I remembered my lecturer in school. Wakati na maningi, lecturer wangu I remember that man used to be Bemba by tribe, one chola. And one of the things he said, you guys, though you complain of sin, actually sin is the employer. We've all been employed because of sin. Then I sat down to look and also think reasonably. I discovered for sure he was right. Except the difference was in the perspectives and how far somebody could go into thinking. You know, philosophy, people are being philosophical here on earth, and I remember there's also a counsel in the Bible which says that Paul giving a counsel in Romans, is it Romans or Corinthians, to say, be careful of this vain philosophy, that the people may mock even your faith and your religion because of the same. We have been employed because of sin, of course. Trust me, if me and you one day we woke up and preached so well, then the end result would be that there would be no cope. Now, if you and I gave heed to the Bible, we stop stealing, we stop committing all manner of crime. Certainly me and you will be sending a police officer home without a job. Apparently, if everyone could give heed to the commandments of God, and also our eating habits, and then we don't get sick, because we are all in sound health. If we just ever gave heed to the laws of health, and then we get to have sound health, that me and you should reach at a point where we don't get sick, to a point we would actually be sending a doctor and a nurse homeless or jobless, because at that point they would not have something to give. If at all people could just remain with the knowledge that God had intended to give them, it would actually mean that we wouldn't have had teachers. But because of sin, me and you turned out to be down. We turned out to have no knowledge. Of course, perhaps the word that would mean something. It would be too deep. But it meant that me and you would remain ignorant, and we needed one to give us the knowledge so that we can be called educated or knowledgeable. So if we had the knowledge that God intended us to have from the beginning, a teacher would go jobless. Right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, we see all these things, we see all these professions that we boast about. It is because things went wrong somewhere. And apparently the devil has come on board to look as if he's the employer. Out of sin, we are employed. Now, let's get to the bottom of this. Number one, man was never to seek employment from anybody, because God had endowed him, number one, not just with the resources, but also with the dominion that he should have control over everything that God created. And everything was created for the betterment of man's life. You know, God is not like me and you who just have children without sitting down to plan that they should find something as they grow. God is not like me and you who would want to benefit from the children we give birth to, that they should be able to keep us, and yet we've not kept them. And yet we've only given them misery. God, in the way he was creating, he made the provision first before he could bring one who should utilize the providence. So God creates everything. He puts the minerals, he puts the water, he puts everything so that it could work to a good life of man. The fruits, everything was there. And then he gives him dominion that he should have control over everything that God created. In short, man is put as a steward that he may have benefit and also preserve these things for the continuity of his life. But what do you and I do through Adam and Eve? We come and sin, and then who comes to tempt us? It is the devil. He has no place, because in heaven, as Revelation says, there was no place found for him, and he was cast down. Casting down doesn't mean that he was cast to earth. He was cast out of the presence of God, and then he had to go into all the worlds that God created, that he should find a place where he could also be a king. And because me and you, who were put as the kings of this earth, Adam was given to be the prince of this earth, given that mandate of dominion over everything that was on earth. Why pamumanza Satan nguzi Adam, and then he relinquishes that power into the hands of the devil, and he loses the dominion. And since then, if you remember in the book of Daniel, the angel Gabriel is saying that the prince of this earth had held me, and that is the reason why for 21 days he couldn't come to give the explanation of the dream to Daniel. The prince of this earth, we know so well that it is the devil. How did he get the princeship? It was because Adam relinquished his dominion and power into the hands of the devil. And since then, because of the sin that entered, when we are beguiled by the devil, when he lied to us, we did not just only lose. You know, the devil was so cunning to evil to make her feel that in the presence, in the state in which she was, actually God was hiding something from her. God was being unfair, that she could not have the wisdom that she was actually supposed to have, by God saying that she should not eat of the tree of the good of the tree of knowing good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. And yet the fact is that what God had actually given this woman and Adam, it was already wisdom. But the moment they thought that they were lacking something, the devil spoke as if he is speaking to their advantage, to give them the advantage of a life. The very way you and I today feel that when we've been stopped to drink, when a pastor preaches against drinking, when the pastor preaches against fornication, against these things, and they don't just want us to have a good life. They are obliterating, they are closing the way of our happiness. You know, you only live once, you have to do these things and also have the fun. So that's how it apparently looks like. But the devil was not doing this for Adam or for Eve to open her eyes that she should know or she should enjoy life. He was doing it for himself. He knew to say the moment that Eve was going to be in discord, the moment she was going to disconnect herself from God, then she was actually, together with her husband, relinquishing powers from them into his hands. And since then, me and you became beggars. If you remember in Israel, there was the year of Jubilee. If I told you owe me something, there was a rule in Israel that if you owe me something and you are not able to pay me, I can get you to be a slave. Until the year of Jubilee, that's when you are going to be allowed to go back to your place, or unless your relative buys you back. Now, me and you, we became slaves into the hands of the devil the moment we relinquished our dominion. And then the devil became our master. And since then, because his goal is to achieve, he's the origin of sin, the originator of sin. And since he knows to say sin abounds in him, he wants to employ you and I through sin. And that's how today we are. I'm not saying being a doctor is sin. I'm saying because of the sin that came in, me and you are sick, and then somebody has found employment out of sin. Try to reason very well. The desire of God is that his desire initially was, if we led a sinless life, we had power over God. We had the power over animals. We had the dominion over trees and everything. We were not going to work for anybody. We were going to have everything that we ever needed. And we needed not to go to ask from anyone. It is just like you're a son and then your father dies, he leaves you with the property. And then you misuse that property at the end of the day. And then you start working from people. The intention of your father was that you should be able to have something without begging from anybody. But the moment you misuse your wealth, you start working for people, you become a slave. And that's how you and I are now. God never intended us to be in this slavery. Dear brothers and sisters, we have a home where we will not work for anybody. We have a home, the initial home that God intended us to have, where everything will be provided for us. We will create and we will create no more. God wants us to have that kingship, that power to have dominion over his creation. May God bless you. Happy Sabbath as you prepare to worship God in spirit and in truth.